everybody.
Hello.
Thank you both for being here.
Thank you for letting us chat with you about this amazing book.
Yeah, thank you for sharing this stage. With us.
I just want to put you both on the spot and say I'm such a tremendous fan of both of you. And so this was really just a coy attempt to just get to hang out with you both. So we could just talk. We
could just, yeah, how have you been?
I've been good. I've been good.
How's life?
Yeah.
Nat. Hi.
Hello.
That was fantastic. That was excellent.
Hey, thank you. A minor and G. That's all I felt comfortable playing.
It was all you needed. It's all anyone needs.
Good enough for Hall & Oates.
You've touched on that, but story-wise, can you tell us, for those who haven't read it yet, and oh boy, do they have a lot to look forward to, can you tell us what When the Wolf Comes Home is about?
I
Please.
can. Yes, I can attempt it. This is the capsule synopsis. When the Wolf Comes Home is about a struggling actress named Jess out in L.A., and one night after a horrific shift at the dead-end 24-hour diner that she works in, she comes home to discover a scared little boy hiding in her bushes in the apartment complex that she lives in. And she, takes the little boy in and she tries to find from him what the issue is, what the problem is, and before she can really get his story, violence erupts, and she and the little boy wind up on the run after a horrifying monster turns her apartment complex into an abattoir and is now pursuing them cross-country. And Jess pretty quickly thereafter realizes that the monster that is wreaking such havoc is the little boy's father, and he will do anything to get his son back. And so now they have to do their best not to be there when the wolf comes home.
Wow, you really brought it around
there.
Did
I do it? Been practicing that in the shower for weeks.
So there are a lot of elements in this novel that you bring together beautifully, but I'm curious, what was the origin? Did you want to write a werewolf book? Did you want to write about dads? Did you want to write about fear? How did it come about?
There were a few streams that kind of converged. And I don't know about you guys. I'm curious if you have a similar process. But whenever I want to write something long form, a full heavy commitment sort of work, three elements need to click into place. And it's always a different three elements per thing, but it just needs that feeling of rule of three completion. And for this one, it was I wanted to tell a chase story. I had just finished writing my book Nestlings and a novella Rest Stop, and those books are very claustrophobic and contained. Nestlings is all in a New York apartment, and Rest Stop is all in a rest stop bathroom. So I was like, okay, I want to write something where it's the opposite of that. I want to write something where you have the entire canvas of the continent at your disposal, but the danger is still there, and you can't get away. You're not trapped. Now you have horrible freedom. So that was stream one. And then stream two was I did really want to write about dads. My previous works, Mary and Nestlings, kind of serve as sort of memorials and or remembrances for people that I've lost or rough times that I've gone through. And so Mary was dedicated to my mom, and Nestlings was all about some, when my pets died and when my wife and I lived through this horrible year where everything was going wrong and everyone around us was dying and we were dealing with medical issues up the wazoo, and so I was honoring that moment with Nestlings. And as a part of a trilogy, my dad had also died that same year. And so I wanted to write something that also I could dedicate to him the way I dedicated Mary to my mom. And so I really did want to write about dads and the nature of dads and the kind of mercurial archetypal figure of the father, which to me has always just been a shifting, weird, shape-shifty kind of thing anyway. I feel everyone has very mutable feelings about the fathers in their lives, even themselves as fathers. It's just the role of fatherhood is just this uniquely tricky thing to nail down. And so I wanted a story that could also reflect that. And then I really wanted to write a book about fear about anxiety, about the things. I talk about it in the afterword of this because I'm a tremendous oversharer in my afterwards, and so I talk about how I went through this spate of severe anxiety, crippling anxiety in my early 20s, which I know is such a relaxed time for all of us. But I was unprepared for it, and I had just moved to New York. I'd never experienced winter before. I grew up in the desert. I'd never seen snowfall, let alone, had to deal with the sun setting at 1 p.m. And so I just started having like these inescapable thought cycles and intrusive thoughts, not cycles, but spirals. So it was really destabilizing for like a good couple of years. And so I also wanted to write a book that kind of allowed me to dive into the nature of fear, the very strange nature of adult fear and the kind of juxtaposition between adult fear and childhood fear, and how when we are little kids, like all it takes is a very literal metaphor in a pop song to just terrify you. Like you just see monsters and they're all face value. And then the older you get, the more that face value refracts and becomes just like these nebulous things, like intrusive thoughts and career worries and medical worries and like, oh, what if this thing happens? What if it doesn't happen? Like it's no longer, the shape in the shadows, but it is just like all shadows everywhere, and you can't fight it, you can't run away from it. So those kind of three streams converge to be like, oh, I can slip those into basically a story that apes the structure of Terminator 2 and has a scary werewolf. It's fun to be a horror writer.
Well, and you did a fantastic job with it.
Oh.
It's an amazing book, and if you don't want to take my word for it, you don't have to, because tell us, Nat, what's it like to have Stephen King call your book quote, terrific and a classic and a balls to the wall horror novel which I defy you to put down, end quote.
I mean, it feels pretty good. I mean, it's weird. As a neurotic person, this probably will not come as a surprise, but like my body is trying to reject it the way it might reject like a new limb. It's just kind of like, it didn't happen. No. This is a thing that literally I have been sending Stephen King stories since I was 13 years old. He would send them back, as was totally his right to do, because it was just unsolicited material from a fucking rando in Arizona. Like, this guy wrote Secret Window, Secret Garden. He knows not to risk someone being like, you stole my story. But so it was just always like this, I can't even call it a goal. It was just like this like monomaniacal pursuit. And then it happened while I was literally in a therapy session, which felt appropriate. But because it happened on social media too, like there's this feeling of like, well, this could not be real. I don't know. Like there's still something about it that I haven't quite internalized yet, and I'm working on it. I'm beyond grateful, but like I'm beyond grateful for all the blurbs this book has gotten. The two of you gave me such incredibly generous and amazing reviews that mean the world to me. So it was also interesting that it kind of functioned as like the little cherry on a just amazing Sunday already. Like the way the community has embraced this book has meant more to me than I could even possibly articulate, with a guitar or without a guitar. So yeah, now the main question is like we just got to sell through the first printing of this book because we can't put the Stephen King blurb on it because it happened too late. So everybody buy multiple copies, please.
I'm just getting choked up because like I know how much it meant to you, and it's just you're so deserving.
Poor Rachel has heard me vent about it many times in conversation.
But
when's it gonna happen?
Yeah, but I can't feel feelings, so I have some fun. A few would you rather questions to break it up. So just to start off, a props of nothing. Take a road trip with Large Marge or go to the eye doctor with Judge Doom?
Oh God! Fight, flight, freeze, fawn. I think I would me now, adult me, Large Marge all the way.
Okay.
She seems awesome. I really want to hear her story more. I love a good jump scare. Large Marge, as a kid, that also was a thing that sent me running out of the room, screaming. I screamed a lot as a little kid. But that was traumatizing in a way nothing else had ever been traumatizing before or since. But Judge Doom is just like, he's such an asshole.
Yeah.
Like, I wouldn't want to be in a room with him, let alone
true.
a doctor's office.
So, Large Marge?
Large Marge, all the
Okay.
way. She's got good stories. She's got a good radio.
Have your upstairs neighbor be a werewolf or have your current landlord be your landlord?
Oh, this got real fast. Well, with a werewolf, that's only a once a month thing, right? I mean, it depends on what werewolf you're working with. Like, is it the werewolf that like half changes when the lunar cycle is approaching the full moon, or is it just a full moon? I'm gonna need more information, is what I'm saying. I'm gonna need more context.
Yeah, just the once a month full
The
moon.
once a month? Are they cool? Are they a DJ? Because I lived under a DJ once and it was awful.
Yeah, it's a DJ werewolf.
Oh, then my landlord,
like,
all the way.
Like
all the way.
they are, DJ werewolf.
No,
Okay.
no, thank you.
So current landlord. I have two more I'll save for later, but I want to ask, you were talking about like childhood fears and like as a kid, Large Marge, and as an adult, Judge Doom, and like how our fears kind of change as we get older, the things that we like being afraid of all of the shadows. Are there any childhood fears that have persisted into adulthood? I mean, clearly you've accepted man-eater, like that doesn't seem to faze you anymore too much.
It still gives me like a little bit of frisson, like just like that little feeling when you hear that like
Just a
sax
little, yeah.
happen. Yeah. It's fucking eerie. That song is so eerie. And it's like one of the only things that has helped is like being able to like play it on guitar or be like, oh, it's just Stevie Wonder's Part-Time Lover. It's the exact same song. Like that helps. That helps to kind of knock it down a peg. Man, what childhood fears persist? You want to get like real deep?
Yeah.
Okay. I have very few recurring dreams, but I had multiple recurring dreams when I was a kid of we can unpack this all day if we want. But I was in a ballet class with like, and the reason I knew it was a ballet class is because I had a full tutu on and everything. And I was a theater kid, so I took a lot of dance classes, but I never had to wear like a full tutu. But that was only just like a detail. The real thing was that I was in this ballet class and we walk out of the dance studio and this giant robot is attacking the city in the distance. So you can like see the smoke rising up from the skyline and you can hear it approaching, but it's not there yet. And so I had that dream multiple times as like a 7 to 10-year-old. As an adult, this is going to get real depressing real fast, so think of like funny things to talk about later. I've had as an adult those dreams where like I'm in like an office or something like that and I look across the water and I see a mushroom cloud erupt. And then I'll like wake up and like I'll still feel like the percussive blast in my teeth. And I think what those both translate to me is like this persistent fear of just not being able to get in the way of events that are bigger than me. Like I'm just this small, vulnerable thing, literally just wearing like tights. I have nothing to hide myself from the outside world, and like there's a thing approaching. And I never see that thing arrive in the dream. It's just always like, oh, okay, it's about to start, and then I wake up. And that has no bearing on any sort of contemporary events whatsoever.
Where do you get it all?
I just have a wonderful imagination. Whole cloth, just making it up.
Without revealing too much, your book is a book where the characters are on the move. And this is a granular craft question. But we are really with them throughout their journey, sometimes hour by hour. And when I was reading it, I was thinking, damn, he has to keep them fed, washed-ish. They have to sleep sometimes or, go completely nuts, which is also an option. Your characters have a lot to deal with. And because like the book is so incredibly paced, we don't really leave them alone for very long. We kind of always know what they're doing. What was that like for you as a writer? Did you have to remind yourself that like they had to eat, sleep, and clean themselves?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I did I did the calendar and everything. Like I had like a visual layout just so I could like keep track of like when a thing happened, and I loved it. I think my first book, Mary, and the current book that I'm writing, which is kicking my ass in a way no book has kicked my ass since Mary. They were so difficult, I realized, because they anything could happen. Like, they take place over a long amount of time, and so it's up to your discretion as the writer to be like, how granular do you get? And that can sometimes make you be like, did I just skip over a major event? Do I need to burrow down into this event? Can I just summarize this in a paragraph? But with this, it was like, no, we are with these characters for I think it's 3 or 4 days. So I don't have to worry about what time to compress. I can just indulge in my Stephen King influenced instincts to just kind of be like, all right, we're just going to be with these people. We're going to see everything that is happening, and everything that happens is going to contribute to this growing sense of danger. So I really I would love to do another chase kind of narrative.
All right, so I have another would you rather, but it leads into it a legit question. Would you rather babysit the boy from your novel or sit through a bad improv show?
Both will unleash untold horrors, but I've survived bad improv before. So I think I gotta go with bad improv, but it'll be hard.
Yeah. So speaking of your two main characters, which is, I would say, the boy and Jess, how did you think, how did you come up with the idea for the story and then kind of think about the characters to fit in? Did you have an idea of who they were before you started writing? How did that process happen for you?
It was really interesting. And anyone out there who is a fan of my book, Mary, and has read the afterwards and stuff like that for it might get a kick out of knowing that I wrote Mary. That sounds way more impressive than I mean to. I wrote a version of Mary when I was 13. That was among the pages that I sent to Stephen King, funnily enough. But the 13-year-old Nat version of Mary, we don't talk about it other than it existed. It was not very impressive at all, but it did exist. The book that I started to write after that was the book that eventually became this. It had a gallingly pretentious title called Under the Mask of Autumn Twilight. Mask was spelled with a Q. Q-U-E. Yeah. I was a Shakespeare kid. So but I never finished it the way I'd finished Mary at that age. I just kind of wrote the first couple of chapters. And the only reason why I bring that up is because even then, this story, which bears very little resemblance to what this book actually is, because there was no supernatural element to it at all. It was just a book that was about a little boy running away from an abusive father and winding up in the custody of this slacker, this woman who barely had her life together, this that's basically as far as I wrote. But I mentioned that just because Jess and the boy then have just kind of always existed in that that liminal writer space of those flashes we get and we're one day I'll free them from thought jail. So they were just kind of always bouncing around in there, and they had no personality. They had nothing about them that made them who they eventually became in this book. But I wasn't ready to tell that story yet, I guess. And so it took realizing who Jess could be and being informed by my own frustrations as an actor and as someone who sat through a lot of bad improv, and kind of getting enough distance from what it was like to be the scared little boy to be able to figure out who they actually are. So it was a really wonderful process discovering them while writing this version of the novel. In fact, this novel was intended to be my 80,000-word novel. I was this is going to be my airport, 200-page, just so commercial, look out, commercial writers. And I gave it to my brilliant editor who read it and was it's missing something. It's missing the thing that makes it a novel you would write, and that missing thing wound up being 15,000 words that are all basically just Jess's life and inner life and backstory and the things that make her who she is. And once all that stuff was actually in place, it was oh, yeah, that's what it needed. This was just a screenplay treatment without it.
This segues perfectly to into something I wanted to ask you, which is you have, as we have seen, many, many talents. In addition to being a novelist, you are a musician, an actor,
sort of.
a playwright. You have directed as well. I was wondering, do your various artistic brains talk to one another when you're working, or do you compartmentalize much like those serial killers who also have normal lives?
What do you write about serial killers or something like that?
Never.
I'm a real quiet tenant. No, they do. They very much talk to each other. Like it is all informed by the different disciplines, and like in a weird way, they all kind of were leading to being a novel writer, if I can say something so haughty like that. But like they were always like twin disciplines when I was a kid. I was always an actor, and I was always like writing these abortive little Stephen King knockoffs. And never the twain met until I started writing plays in my 20s or something like that. And there are people in this audience who have been in or sat through plays of mine. And one of the many comments people would say about my plays is like, this feels like a book. Like this is a very novel length play. And I always gave intermissions. I'm very generous as a playwright. But I like to dig deep. So like when it came time to when I realized that this was really what I wanted to do, I was able to bring all the tools that those other disciplines have given me, and there's a lot of playwriting and play structure that always affects my novel writing now, and the sort of economy of drama, and making sure every scene has a purpose, and even down to being a theater producer, I always try and make sure every character would be worthy of hiring an actor. Even if it's just a walk-on role, it's well, somebody's got to fill this role, so there's at least got to be something interesting about them. That part of my brain never turns off, and then I have all this acting training of inhabiting characters, and occasionally that will mean doing little improv games in my head or out loud in the privacy of my office, which we don't talk about. But it all kind of informs what I hope feels like a very organic and lived-in sort of final result.
That makes sense.
And the music actually has the least amount of influence, because I can't listen to music as a writer.
Really?
At all. I cannot.
You don't listen to anything?
I can't have any sound whatsoever. I've recently discovered that maybe if I play a YouTube video that is 10 hours of a shower running, I can get with that. But the minute there is, because I'm a shower thinker, I'll just sit in the shower and interview myself. But I will, if there's any music, then musician brain clicks on, and suddenly I'm ooh, that chord change is nice, or maybe I should try and learn how to play that, or blah, 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 and I'm completely out of it. So music is siloed off.
I like white noise. That's it. I can do, because if I'm listening to music and I hear a lyric, I'm what was that lyric?
Yeah. Words mess you up.
At the risk of outing myself as the psycho in this trio, I do one song on repeat.
Ooh.
So that you stop hearing the lyrics.
That makes sense.
Interesting.
It's a different. Is it a song that's vibe appropriate?
Yeah. Although there is one song I always go back to. It's called Charlie by a band called Mallrat. I don't know anything about Mallrat. I have never listened to any other song, but I've listened to Charlie 300,000 million times.
But then you can't. But then, if you like the song, you'll never be able to listen to it again, because I feel you just be I gotta write. It's that kind of
It's Pavlovian.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah. I wanted to talk a little bit about genre, because this book is what people like to call genre bending. There's thriller, there's horror, and I know we both love the Twilight Zone. I would say there's a little sci-fi surprise, perhaps, in Sci-Fi Center. Did you approach it as I'm going to write a horror thriller? Did you try and see that as a challenge, or do you not really think about genre when you sit to write?
That's a good question. And I'm glad you brought this up too, so I can fully acknowledge one of the main reasons I really wanted to have both of you on this panel is because you're a brilliant horror writer and a brilliant thriller writer. And so this was kind of my homage to the genre bending of the book in human form. I kind of don't think about it from the outside in, but I think that's because everything I write is always horror to me, and that's because I think of every good story as a horror story anyway. Because to me, what all a horror story is a story where there are stakes, where there's something the characters don't want to lose, whether it is their limbs or their head or their lives, or When Harry Met Sally could be a horror story if they don't get together at the end. Like, that would be so horrific and sad. Like every story, if the characters are going to fail and have to deal with loss, that ultimately to me is just a stand-in for mortality, and that ultimately then is a horror story. So every time I write a story, I'm just kind of like, what thing am I going to try and process? What loss am I going to try and process with this story? And because this could even be an imaginative shortcoming of mine, I don't know, but like I just like monsters. So I'm always like, there's got to be like a monster in it. There's got to be like some sort of body count, even if it's not like physical bodies. There's just got to be some casualty to this story. It's one of the reasons why I always have trigger warnings in my books, because even as like a kid or a high school student or something like that, like I would always resist things that I was told I had to read, and if I had gotten like a content warning of like there are dead bodies in here, there are horrific things in this book, I would have been like, okay, I'm gonna read this book. So for me, like content warnings are at once an acknowledgement for the sickos like me who are just like, I want to know what nasty things are going to be in this book, while also honoring the people who might not want to deal with those nasty things. So yeah, I love genre, and I love the honesty of the horror genre and the way the horror genre allows us to address things like loss and death and existential dread and stuff like that. So yeah, I think what it would take, and what it has to, like I do have one play that is not a horror play, and it is a romance. There's a disemboweling scene in it, but it's a dream. But I explicitly wrote it as a romance, and that was one of the few times that I was actually like, no, I'm going to like impose a genre onto this. I'm going to try and like figure out what it is.
I mean, nothing says romance like a disemboweling.
Right? So intimate.
We are going to open to audience questions in like a minute or two, so start thinking about what you'd like to ask. But just to give people a minute, I wanted to ask you, Nat, what does it feel like for you when you are writing internally?
Ooh, that's a good question.
Thank you.
And I want you both to answer this too, because I'm curious. Because for me, writing is like one of the. I've taken a fair amount of drugs in my life. Not as an adult. Like this was like high school stuff. But nothing compares to like the high that writing gives you, and yet it's the only drug I know of that is constantly just fighting you to take it. Like it does not want you to reach this euphoria at all. It's constantly like slipping away, you can't get me. But then once you like find it, once you nail it down, like you could do it all day and like look up and be like, oh my God, 12 hours have passed. But for some reason, getting into that zone is the hardest thing, but when it's working, it's amazing and it's immersive. And I mean, I really do kind of compare it to acting in a way, because like anyone who has acted, especially like on stage, because film offers like such rare opportunities for like a long form moment. You're always like filming like little bits, but like when you are doing a play and you're on stage and you essentially feel yourself disappear into the role. And this sounds so pretentious, but it is so limbic and true, where you just kind of start to disassociate, and suddenly you know what it is like to be this other person. And there's always a part of your brain that is detached and is like, make sure you sit down with your left butt cheek on that side of the table, and make sure the prop is in this thing, and make sure when you get slapped you're facing upstate. Like there's part of you that is just watching it happen, but the main part of you is like gone in a really fascinating way. And I feel like writing is a very similar thing, where suddenly you're just like living this story, and maybe there's part of you that's like, I got to break up this paragraph length or something like that. But is that the same for both of you as well?
I'd compare it for myself to running. Like you have to show up 20 times, like on 20 shitty runs, and the 21st will feel good. And it will be the best thing, and it's what keeps you coming back. But you have to do the 21s first. And it's like the same goes for writing in my experience, right? Like I have to show up every day, and then at one point it will be like the best thing ever. And then you just have to like keep showing up. And then it'll be good. And then some days it'll just, something you get done. But yeah, and I think one of the fallacies is it kind of like takes an hour to become good, because it takes an hour to get into it. But usually that's when the real world calls you back, you know?
Always.
What about you, Rachel?
Pretty much the same. You know, I write close first person, so as soon as I like click into that character, it feels good, and I can kind of just write it out. And like a good writing day is euphoric. There's nothing better. A bad writing day,
So cranky.
so cranky.
Oh my God.
I'm gonna slip in one more question before we open it up. It's quick. Would you rather spend an afternoon with Pennywise or have your taxes done?
Have my taxes done, like someone else is doing them?
Like you have to go and like sit with an accountant.
Pennywise all the way.
Yeah.
Dude's
That's
a
like
clown.
Childhood fear versus adult fear.
After you got hired to write that novelization, you're like, holy shit, I'm a novelist, and I have this book I've always wanted to write. Is that what propelled you to say, I could finally write this book, Mary, I've always wanted to write?
It really was. Yeah, I have sometimes, I don't know if I've ever done it out loud, but internally sometimes I refer to Steal the Stars, which was a novelization I wrote of a podcast, a brilliant podcast by a brilliant playwright and audio dramatist named Mac Rogers, who writes like the best, like high concept, character grounded sci-fi you've ever read. You should absolutely download any audio drama that he has ever written. Gideon Media, plug. So I refer to that novelization that I wrote of this podcast that we made together, this like 14-episode sci-fi noir doomed heist narrative, as my Training Wheels novel. And I realized then, after I wrote that my first play that I ever wrote was also an adaptation. So there was something about, I recommend this to people who are like looking to get into a new medium of writing, whether it's their first one or their third one, where an adaptation can actually really help you, because you don't have to worry about the story, you just have to worry about the language, the literal language of the storytelling device that you're working with. And so you don't have to think about like the more nebulous things, the granular things that can really drive you off into a rut. You can just be like, how do you tell the story for this medium? And so once I did that, I was like, I can do this. I can write a book. I already wrote this book when I was 13, and it was great. I knew so much about perimenopause at 13.
How do you go about writing women, and how do you do it so well? Because everyone that I've ever talked to about your writing, and we've all had the same perspective of feeling like, you know, women historically in horror are not always given a lot of love, and it did not seem to be a effort that people used to put in, you know, in movies and in books. It was always the women were the first ones to die. They were sex figures, like yada, yada, yada. But you write your characters, your female characters, with so much heart and respect. And so just want to know your process, how you go about that.
Well, that means more than I can say. I really appreciate that. I think, trying to think of a good, honest answer that doesn't like trivialize the question too, because I don't want to make it sound like, you know, writing women is like it's a skill you can learn, like because each woman or character is just like an individual, I think part of it is that I really don't understand men at all, and this book was kind of my attempt at that. I was raised by a single mom. Pretty much everyone in my family is a woman, and a very strong, amazing woman. And so I never really had many like male role model, and I feel very uncomfortable around men. There's a great comedian, Chris Fleming, who has a song, I'm Afraid to Talk to Men. And like when I heard that, I was like, yeah, I know what you mean. So like, all of which is to say, like, it's not something I necessarily even like think about. It's just like, these are the people that I know and I love and I want to honor. And then I'm very lucky to be surrounded by, you know, many female friends who will not let me get away with shit, including my editor. My editor's, you know, been, you know, phenomenally diligent, especially with Mary and Nestlings. Like, if I am treading into territory that I'm about to just show my ass, like, she's like, that's not right, that's not authentic, that is either a horror cliche or that is just like a blind spot. And I guess I'm also someone who takes blind spots very seriously. Like I want to know what I don't know, and then I want to honor that as best I can.
One of the first things that we bonded over on social media was when I was talking about nestlings, and I was like, it reminds me of the Sentinel, and you were like, what a good pull.
Jeffrey Konovitz, the Sentinel.
Yes. And we were talking about, like, I was just like talking about all of the movies that Nestling reminds me of, and I'm very excited to watch The Howling with you in a few weeks. But what other movies should I be thinking of for this book? Because I haven't read it yet. This is the first time can you believe?
Whoa.
Well,
the obvious touch point, which I've already mentioned, is Terminator 2, because I very much lifted the structure of Terminator 2 for this book. I think Terminator 2 is the platonic ideal of a chase story because it allows you to have your genre thrills. It basically is like, hey, what if Terminator happened again, but different? And this time, we basically try and stop Terminator from happening. And so it becomes like, you basically have Act 1 is the Terminator again, and then Act 2 is like, well, let's go on a little side quest and talk about motherhood, and let's talk about fatalism, and let's talk about if we can even undo things that haven't even happened yet. And then Act 3 is like, oh shit, there's a Terminator, then it's still out there to get us, and we forgot about that, and now we got to fight this Terminator. So I really wanted to borrow that structure and have a chase narrative that allows for some deeper themes to kind of be explored in the quieter moments when they have just the briefest time to catch their breath. There's also, I would say more the book than the movie, but Firestarter is a big influence, which ironically, like the movie Firestarter, the Drew Barrymore vehicle, 1980-something, 84, I think, is like one of the most accurate Stephen King movie adaptations. It hits every beat of the book, and it is so lifeless and dull. So it's not a very good adaptation, but that influenced the kind of vibe, and included in that is, I guess I gotta mention the Twilight Zone movie, even though that's kind of a spoiler, but I'm not gonna shy away from it. But there is a segment in the Twilight Zone movie that was also a segment in the show. And was also based off of, I'm saying this to Rachel like she doesn't know. Rachel watches every Twilight Zone episode. What is it? Yeah. But that segment is also based on a short story by a golden age sci-fi writer named Jerome Bixby called "It's a Good Life," and that has just always been one of those great concept sci-fi stories. So I was like, I want to homage that in a way. I want to deconstruct that in a way. So those are three of them. And then every werewolf movie you can imagine. There are references to dog soldiers visually. There are references to a great adaptation of Angela Carter's The Bloody Chamber called Company of Wolves, which was one of those VHS covers that traumatized me as a kid. That gets a little visual shout out in here. And as you mentioned, The Howling, which I'll be doing a screening of in Brooklyn at, what is the name? Nighthawk. At Nighthawk. I was like, it's not Alamo, it's the Brooklyn version. At Nighthawk on May 15th, so you should come see that. It's 4K, Howling.
So I just want to know, I love all your things, but I recently really loved Rest Stop and have been offering that to a lot of people. Yeah, we got some Rest Stop fans. I love it. And I was wondering what your inspiration was for that. That's more of it's a brother story, right? There's a lot of faith. We're asking ourselves those sort of questions, and I love the claustrophobic sort of feel of it. But I just want to know sort of where that sort of inspiration came from, because it is a little, I think, different than your other ones. I don't know if you have a brother that you wrote that for.
I do.
You do?
Exactly.
Okay,
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah, and that was also about unpacking my very real grandmother too. That was a big influence for that story. Because I had a grandmother who was a lot, and had also been through a lot of stuff, and it took me a long time to kind of be to kind of suss out where her trauma informed the traumas that she kind of inflicted on me and my brother. Yeah, Rest Stop it's all in the title. It's about a guy who gets trapped in a gas station bathroom by an unseen assailant, let's say, and he kind of has to unpack his trauma as he's trying to find his way out and then back in, because it's not very safe outside of the bathroom either. And it becomes a story that sort of looks into the greater ramifications of horror again, I feel like I'm sounding very, very proud of myself. But like that was my attempt, was to kind of tell an existential story in a very real, a very tangible place. Because exactly as you've just articulated, to me, horror is an ultimately optimistic genre, because you do get to, and I think anyone who is a horror fan, vis-a-vis that NIH study, which is very real, anyone who is a horror fan, I think, is probably two things at the same time: a very anxious person and a very optimistic person. Even if you don't think of yourself as an optimistic person, I feel like horror allows us to learn by others' mistakes and to see like how that person survived or how that person didn't survive. And then I think we put that in the back of our anxious brains and are like, okay, if I'm ever in danger, I can draw on this. And so I wanted to kind of explore, and actually When the Wolf Comes Home does some similar explorations of like, what is the utility of fear? What is the gift that facing that worst day of your life can actually give you? Or what did that character not learn to survive that moment? Because horror can give us the tools we need to survive in very entertaining ways, let's say.
We're going to trot out that study till the end of time.
Yeah, anytime anyone gives a shit, here you go. Science.
Well, actually.
Yeah. I'm more psychologically resilient.
So you talk a lot about embracing fears, and I love that. And I would like to know, what is the fear that still scares you that you're not ready to write about right now, but you want to embrace in the future in your writing?
Man.
That's a really good last
That
question.
is.
Sorry, I'm giving you 10 seconds to think.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, but that is a great question. It's interesting that I kind of look at these three books that came before, When the Wolf Comes Home, Mary, and Nestlings, as kind of a trilogy. Because they're kind of like they're all completely unrelated. I mean, they're a little like Easter eggs and like shout outs to each other in the books themselves, because again, Stephen King fan. But, they're very separate, self-contained stories. And they're kind of like my grief trilogy in a way. The book that I'm writing right now, and then the two books that I want to write after that, weirdly became their own very unofficial trilogy. I mean, they're not written yet, but like just kind of conceptually in my head, because they're all about very indirect approaches to the apocalypse. They're all about, and I kind of mean the apocalypse with like a lowercase a, but they are all about ways in which the world falls apart. And I think what I'm trying to do with them is approach exactly what you're describing, like these things that really deeply scare me in ways that I can literally hide behind a genre story, because the ramifications of the stories are so unpleasant. Like the Mary, Nestlings, and When the Wolf Comes Home all have moments of transcendence to them, and these books feel very much like the transcendence is maybe not going to be as successful purposefully, where it's like, okay, but what if things really can get too bad to rise up from? Just as a example, like the book I'm currently writing, that I'm almost done with the first draft of, is like all about social media and cell phone addiction and misinformation and stuff like that just fucking terrifies me whenever I sit down to like actually think about it, or whenever I find myself unable to stop looking at my phone. And so I'm trying to use these stories as like a life raft to be like, okay, let's talk around it. Like maybe let's have some little genre thrills to help me swallow these really disturbing things. And then one of them is all about bugs. Because bugs will always scare me, but in a very fun way. Because I grew up in the desert, and you got to respect bugs, because they're all full of poison. So I'm still scared of bugs.
But Nat, if you write this apocalypse trilogy, you'll stop having your dream.
I might.
You'll purge that from your mind, and you'll stop having the...
Yeah. And then what will I be left with?
Yeah.
You'll come up with something.
Yeah. Then it'll be my writer's block trilogy. Just a guy staring at a screen.